Well, it's time now for us to go through the morning papers. Here with me to review them are Mary McLeod, former policy advisor to the Queen, and former Daily Telegraph royal photographer Ian Jones. So welcome back to both of you. And in the last hour, we looked at a lot of the front pages, again dominated by this story and the queues coming up to Westminster Hall. And a photograph on the front, Ian, that's quite striking on the front of many of them, of the vigil paid by the Queen's children last night, and tonight of course it's the role of the grandchildren, and you spotted an article inside the Times, haven't you, about that?
Well, that's it. I think it's Prince Harry wearing his uniform, quite rightly so. I'm very fortunate in that I photographed Prince Harry all the way through from Eton, Sandhurst and beyond, and you know, really his time spent through Sandhurst, graduating and passing out Sandhurst, and then with a very, very good career in the military. You know, he served in Afghanistan, of the Army Air Corps, and flew helicopters. I think it's only right. You know, the military has a great respect for the uniform that they wear, and I feel it's quite right. Harry has earned that right to wear the uniform with pride.
Do you agree with that, Mary?
Yes, I mean, I think it was very appropriate for that to happen yesterday, and a lot of thought would have gone into that. And it's an important part. I think the vigil, I think, was just so moving, and to see the mass family members grieving, and also, of course, with our new king having his new responsibilities. So it's, you know, it was a special moment, I think, in history, to see the support also surrounding it, the support that they've given the Queen so much over so many years. And we forget, you know, the Prince of Wales, as was now the new king, has been in service for the last 50 years as the Prince of Wales. So it's been there always behind the Queen, supporting her and everything she was doing.
And of course, Prince Andrew wearing his uniform, which some people are uncomfortable about after his associations with Epstein, of course. But he's wearing his uniform, and we understand, as you say, that Prince Harry will. And let's take a look at an article inside the Times, shall we, Mary? Because we're here towards the very end of the queue to get into the Palace of Westminster and Westminster Hall. And scientists, according to the Times, have been studying the nature of queues and looking at why people do queue up.
Yes, and it's amazing just to see the crowds here, and especially I think it'll be very emotional for them right here. They're about to get into the Palace of Westminster, and they're within touching distance. But this is a crew that absolutely they're there because they want to be there. They're there because they love the Queen. They're there because they want to pay their respects. There's some beautiful interviews that you've done with people in the queues overnight, and they don't mind how long it is. It's part almost of a pilgrimage of being able to sort of go through some hardship to get to that final moment of paying respects, which makes it, I think, all the more emotional. And it's, I think, for them, the unity that they've had, the friendships they've gained, they'll be friends for life, and just sharing in the same emotion and stories. So, you know, this shows united Britain, and from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ages. And I feel very moved just by watching them, and just moved and inspired by seeing them go through this pilgrimage to get to the Palace of Westminster.
I was really struck by just how upbeat people were. They spent 12 hours in a queue on a very chilly night, and there is an extraordinary atmosphere. Are you surprised that so many people seem to have wanted to come and be part of this?
No, quite frankly, I'm not. I mean, I've seen with my own eyes over the past 30 years how long people will wait for the appearance of Her Majesty when she was on her tours and when she was around Britain. So really, for those numbers to queue through the night and to do that, I was speaking to some earlier, and this time, as we see here, they've been doing the 12-hour shift through the night, but they're all very upbeat. They're all here for a purpose, and I think some of them even spoke of the fact this is what in our DNA. This is what we as British are made for, is queuing. We're very good at it, they say as they go along there, and it is upbeat, but it's a solemn upbeat as well. And this is, I think, what we see here is the silent majority of Britain who feel very strongly about the monarchy, and they want to scream it in their silence.
And let's move back to the papers and inside the Express, because you've picked out an article about King Charles, and it focuses on the environment, doesn't it? I think it's an article by Tony Juniper, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
A very well-known environmentalist. And a question, I guess, to what extent he will still push that cause while king.
Well, I hope so, because I've been photographing the royal family, present at all these occasions for the past 30 years. And I go back to when King Charles, the then Prince of Wales, was talking about the environment when it was uncool, when he was ridiculed for it. And now we look at it and see how right he was then and how right he is now. He has put forward various programs and various bodies, including the International Sustainability Unit and A4S Accounting for Sustainability, who've done tremendous work in pursuing and pushing awareness of the environment and the issues related to that. And I can think of no better person, and I've seen it myself, how he draws together the best and the brightest in the world as a pool of knowledge and to how things can get done. The International Sustainability Unit brought together the best marine biologists and the best engineers and the best plastic technology professors, so that they could put forward ideas as to how we can change plastics. And it was only then when it was taken up by Sir David Attenborough, quite rightly so, and made aware of, that he said, "That's it, thank you, done my bit, I will carry on doing other things." Continuing now with the accountability for sustainability, using the financial institutions to put pressure for the environmental group, and what a tremendous job he's done.
And yet he's acknowledged, hasn't he, that his role as king will require him to step back from certain charities and causes, and some might say that in this new role he should keep his views, be more circumspect about his views. Do you think that's likely to happen?
Well, he has said that he will do things differently as sovereign, but we all know what he's passionate about. And I think I completely agree about it. It wasn't for his leadership, at the time when people thought it wasn't the right thing to talk about or it wasn't important, he managed to build awareness and get it up the agenda. And that's why I think whether he will do it privately, certainly when he's talking to prime ministers and heads of state, he will, I'm sure, talk about these things privately, but I take a real interest in them. But I think we need global leadership on this. So the more that he talks up for these things, and to be honest, that aren't necessarily political, they're just something about the sustainability of our world, and making it, leaving this world in a decent place for the next generation. So I still think he absolutely can talk about some of those things, and we will look to him for some of that, because we know that's what he cares about.
Okay, and Mary, you had spotted an article inside the Times as well, it's actually in the Telegraph, about the women of Windsor. So what are they focusing on in that?
Yes, well, having just been, we're here at the Palace of Westminster, and having been a female politician, I really fought to get more women in Parliament, and who best to look at as the example for women than our late Queen, an incredible role model. And I think what this article does really well is talk about the other women as well who have worked really hard. The Princess Royal never stops. She has worked for decades, just been out there doing things in a quiet way. Our new Queen consort, I bumped into her at Balmoral, Auchinleck, and she's the most, just down-to-earth person that is great to engage with her on that basis. The Queen herself, I just laughed the whole time in the first dinner I had with her, because there's that human element to this. And then Sophie Wessex, she was very much, I spoke with her and also with Liz Truss at the financial conference for senior women in the city, Women in Finance Summit. And again, doing some really brilliant work that is often unsung, but it's just their support, have always been supporting the Queen, and they've played an incredible, and just look at the history of the women from Queen Victoria and others who've just been the strength and stay and the rock of this country through centuries.
Well, yes, and we're looking at pictures actually on, first it was a visit to Wales yesterday by King Charles and the Queen Consort, and this is a visit, I think this is Manchester, with the Earl and Countess of Wessex. A couple of days ago, I think that was on Thursday, that they took a visit there and really took their time talking to the crowds. But you wanted to focus on the Welsh trip, because there's an article in the Mirror about that. Obviously, King Charles was Prince of Wales for a very long time. He's handed that title on now to his son, and this article talks about the Queen having a special relationship with Wales.
The Queen did have a very special relationship with Wales. In fact, the whole family did. King Charles was Prince of Wales, and now, as you say, it's passed to Prince William. Prince William, obviously, he served time as a helicopter pilot in Anglesey, so he's lived in Wales. He now takes on the role of the Prince of Wales, and it's following in that tradition of his father, who had a huge fondness for the country and for the Welsh people, similarly as did the Queen Elizabeth. And I think it's really important, really, for that tradition and for that lineage to run through it as a hugely important part of our own country. And I wish Prince William the best as the Prince of Wales, but he's got some big shoes to fill in the way his father was a wonderful head of that state.
Yeah, and the visit yesterday, there was a huge amount of warmth from a lot of the crowds, but there's a little bit of heckling as well. Someone posing the question about the cost of living crisis and the amount of money being spent, and it's a reminder that while there are crowds coming up, Al, there are some people who feel slightly uncomfortable about some aspects of it.
Well, thankfully we live in a country with free speech, and that's good, and people are allowed opinions and are allowed to say these things. But and yes, the cost of living crisis is a major issue right now, and it's on the forefront of the minds of the politicians and others who are having to deal with solutions for that. But I think what I get a sense of right now is a country united. The vast majority of people are absolutely united behind their love and devotion to the Queen, recognising the 70 years of service, and just want to have a moment to say thank you, Mum, for everything that you've done.
Okay, on that note, we will leave it for now. Mary and Ian, thanks very, very much indeed, and I'm pleased to say you'll be back with me in the next hour to take a look at some of the other articles around in the papers. But for the moment, thanks very much indeed. So we talked about that visit yesterday by King Charles in Wales. Let's take a look back at some of the main moments of what's been another very busy day for the King and the Queen Consort.